Pity the one who lashes me with a whip. One must be mad to do so. Rasul Gamzatov, Song of Fools and Sages. Even before the meditation began, everyone understood that it would take longer than usual. Sorting out our future relationship with the planet Earth felt vital to all. The decision was not easy. It caused the most serious contradictions in the last century. So, what do we know about vampires now? The two-way exchange of energy with the surrounding world is disrupted due to a mutation. Such a difference prevents vampires from feeling as normal people do. Thus, the natural exchange of energy through the full spectrum of emotions is inaccessible to them. Mutants are incapable of empathy, love, or self-sacrifice, and therefore lack any moral or ethical guidelines, nor are they susceptible to secondary, that is, social fear. They may still be afraid of physical danger, but they can accurately assess its typically low probability even then. This is why mutants often act boldly, and may appear even reckless. Unburdened by secondary fear, vampires do not lose their composure in difficult circumstances. They make tough decisions without hesitation, which is often mistaken for courage, and earns admiration from normal Homo sapiens. Furthermore, people regard fearlessness and a cold mind as leadership qualities, and so they readily allow vampires to govern society, thereby digging themselves a grave. Homo sapiens despise their fear so much that they are willing to entrust the fates of entire nations to those who do not display it, and often for this reason alone. They cannot read minds and do not know the true causes of the mutants' fearlessness. Mutants are intelligent, well-versed in the rules of the Matrix, and skilled at pretending to care about improving the existence of their kind. This deception is the greatest danger of vampires. In truth, they care for nothing but stealing energy, that is, for their own pleasure and benefit. And the source of pleasure for them is entirely different from that of normal Homo sapiens. Vampires themselves rarely understand why the sight of others' pain excites them so much, but we know that a suffering living being loses energy the fastest. So the more suffering there is, the more a vampire is able to indulge. Others' physical pain satiates mutants the most, and the brutal crimes, wars, and genocides are exclusively their doing. In peacetime, vampires inflict emotional torment since there are few laws against this, let alone the death penalty. The souls of most ordinary Homo sapiens suffer from secondary social fear, which vampires evoke through skilled manipulation, mockery, accusations, criticism, and threats of future suffering. That is how they feed and rip resources from society. In vampire mind, understanding good and evil revolves around rewards. Yet ironically, in pursuit of satisfying their thirst, mutants sometimes even serve society from society's perspective. How? It is very simple. For example, a cold-minded lawyer may well save an innocent person from execution or imprisonment for an attractive fee, but they will also defend the most brutal murderer without hesitation. Such a person fundamentally does not care whose side is truthful. And what has the truth become anyway? Under vampires' influence, Homo sapiens change their values like gloves. We live long, and know better than anyone how unstable their notions of good and evil are, and how they drift away from nature. For example, killing is considered a blessing if it involves destroying an enemy, whoever that may be. So do mutants experience no emotions at all? Well, we certainly observed one emotion in them. That is boredom. A vampire's boredom signifies energy thirst. It causes anger and signals the time to feed on death, fear, and suffering. When harming people is impossible, mutants revert to tormenting animals, but human energy is the most delicious for them. How did these vampires come into existence anyway? There is no complete certainty about this, but one thing is certain: such mutation results from a disturbance in the natural balance. While humans fought the wild predators, gathered fruit and hunted, there were no vampires among them. Perhaps this is why that time is called the Golden Age. Most likely, mutants appeared when Homo sapiens settled down to grow their food and decided to stop relying on nature's provision, thus breaking the balance. Farmers wanted to have more children to get help with the crops. They treated children as tools. They stopped valuing life. They lacked the energy to care for all their offspring properly, and many children simply died in infancy. The surviving ones, raised in fear of supply shortage, eventually began to fight each other for resources. When Homo sapiens realized they were destroying themselves behind the plow, it was already too late. Returning to foraging frightened them. Then the smartest, though far from the most far-sighted, came up with the idea of forcing their fellow humans to till the land, exploiting others' lives and appropriating their energy. The imbalance grew broader and more profound, like a crack in the ground. Manipulating the fears of their kind, vampires invented power, the right to receive willingly surrendered energy in exchange for protection from what? This is where the primary contradiction of Homo sapiens lies. So how and when did protecting people from external dangers, the harsh weather and predators, become less important than protecting them from each other? Who was that first Homo sapien, who decided to hoard what was given by their brethren instead of using it for the common good, then declared a resource shortage and sent their tribesmen to raid neighbors? We will never know the name of the first violator of the natural balance, but the whole history of humanity has turned into a story of vampires fighting for the feeding trough, feasting on the labor, pain and suffering of coerced and deceived victims. And our ancestors? How could they remain idle? The Lemurians hoped that humans would someday learn everything, and free themselves from fear like us. No matter how hard they tried to change something, no matter how many prophets and sages they sent, the primal fear dictated its terms. The mission of Jesus proved ultimately that overcoming the destructive influence of fear on humanity could not be achieved by simply teaching people to live in harmony with the nature that they call God. In just 2 millennia, Homo sapiens distorted Jesus's teachings to absurdity. They killed and enslaved their kind in the name of our messenger. They turned his precepts against both the earth's nature and, ultimately, their species. That's what happens to our knowledge when passed through the prism of human fear. After Jesus, the number of vampires among humans has only increased. This mutation spread so widely that it even received a name in their medicine: psychopathy, which means both passion and disease of the soul. Very apt. And now psychopaths rule the world and drive Earth's nature to the brink of survival. While ordinary Homo sapiens struggle with or succumb to fear, wrestle with moral questions and dilemmas, and make sacrifices in the name of love, vampires unburdened by such things waste no time. Incapable of feeling fear but adept at instilling it, they climb to the hierarchical peaks of the matrix, become its elite, and increasingly enslave humanity. And here's another trick of human hypocrisy: Homo sapien doctors do not consider psychopathy an illness. If vampirism were considered a disability, then according to the Matrix's laws, villains would have to be pitied for being born as villains. They would need to get treated rather than punished. Just imagine how half the prisoners would move from jails to psychiatric hospitals. Many of those in power would have to follow along with the criminals. Would they allow this to happen? Isn't mutation a sign of an impending evolution? Let's presume so. If a new species, vampires, is indeed emerging on Earth, then someone must turn into their prey, energy donors or slaves. Could this be about the evolutionary polarization of Homo sapiens, splitting into 2 species, predator vampires and helpless donors? After all, that's how it is in the animal world. There are hunters and prey, and we don't interfere. So why should we now? Why do we even need to deal with all this? Wouldn't it be better to simply leave Earth, permanently resettle on blessed new Lemuria and live in peace? Perhaps the inhabitants of Lemuria would have remained indifferent to humanity's fate, if not for an extraordinary event. One of the oracles decided to reveal her vision to the others. Seers do this only when the survival of our entire species depends on the decision made in unity. If Homo Liberatus completely withdraw from Earth, the polarization of the remaining race into vampires and donors will indeed occur. This evolutionary path will be a dead end, and fatal for Homo sapiens. In a world ruled by vampires, only vampires will have a chance of survival. The mutation will solidify and spread, the birth of psychopathic children will become the norm, and there will not be enough love on Earth to stand against these monsters. They will draw energy from all living and non-living things, and will not care about replenishing it. Within a couple of 100 years, or perhaps even sooner, vampires will exhaust and destroy not only the donor race but all of Earth's nature and themselves with it, the prophetess explained. The pain of the depleted, weakening planet scorched the hearts of Homo Liberatus. The unified soul of my people became filled with the sorrow of nature, which, like an aged crone who had outlived her time, had resigned herself helplessly to the inevitability of approaching death. Then we all felt Earth's agony, so unbearable it was as if we were trapped in a state of interplanetary teleportation, slowly and painfully disintegrating into atoms. The unified consciousness froze amid this torment, as though Arctic cold had covered a stream with ice, the stream that had never stopped flowing for a single moment before. And this was not yet the end of the prophecy. Here, on New Lemuria, the oracle continued, the humanoids will ascend to a higher evolutionary stage in a few millennia, but just like Homo sapiens, they will not overcome fear. Lemurian hominids too will face the mutation of vampirism, and create an even more brutal matrix than humans. Eventually, life will also become unbearable here, and our descendants will once again have to search for a new home. Beyond that, nothing more can be seen. Marina Vantara. Mission Homo Liberatus, The Beginning.